How can we use manifestation, I guess, in an effective way, in a balanced way to enhance dating, to enhance our relationships and love?
I have been that desperate person. And I also feel and believe that I manifested my husband. I knew the kind of person I wanted to be with. I was open to the opportunities that came to me. If there are people who are listening who I'm sure there are people who are like, oh, well, you still met him when you were young, and I'm in my 30s or I'm in my 40s. I want you to know that.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for joining me on today's show. I am super excited to be chatting with you today.
Oh, thank you, Yvonne.
So you are a psychic coach that helps people with manifesting, and you bring a unique aspect of nature into it, which I really want to know more about and get into. Because I'm, yeah, a nature, I don't want to say freak, but I'm a tree hugger as well, and I feel like we connected on that level. So
Yes.
we'll get into that later on once we build the trust with our audience before we get woo-woo. But I wanted to ask you because manifesting is such a buzzword as well. Everyone's talking about
Mm.
manifesting, the law of attraction on all the social channels. What do you think is I guess, the biggest mistake that people make when it comes to manifesting?
Yes, and that's such a good question. And you're right. It's all over all these platforms. And I think there are two big mistakes actually. One is with how we perceive of it, because a lot of people teach about the fast way to manifest or do this hack. And it feels that we're on this highway and there are manifesting billboards everywhere. And it's just like people grabbing and throwing. And that's how the energy of it feels to me, of frantic and desperate. That quick, fast fix of whatever you feel like is your thing that you're desperate for, that's actually counterproductive in manifesting entirely. I don't want to say that people are teaching it wrong, but it does feel to me a wrong way to present it, because what I know of it is manifesting, I find, happens the best way and the most easy way when you know yourself and when you accept yourself. And from that, then you can work with the world that you're in. But it all begins with that. And I don't see enough people focusing on the self-trust or the self-acceptance or being aware that that is such a big part of it. And so if you like things like self-love and self-acceptance or self-trust, or if you think, oh yeah, those are things that I could practice more and I enjoy that, great, because you're setting yourself up for the best way, the best place to then be engaging with manifesting. And
Hmm.
so I like to think of it with the tree. As we said, we're both into trees and nature, and nature's laws and nature's patterns and habits are very easy ways to understand how the world works, how energy works. And so a tree that is strongly rooted can both reach out its roots, reach out its limbs to connect with other trees, other creatures. But one that is, let's say, desperately reaching for something that's in one direction, if the tree keeps on reaching for it, that tree is going to be imbalanced. There's not going to be this grounded sense to it. It's not, and not only is it imbalanced in terms of all the energy or weight is making it unstable, but other parts of that tree's life are not stable or sustainable if it's trying to reach in one direction towards this only one thing that it thinks it wants. And when you can be more like an old growth tree that has lived somewhere for quite a while, that is so grounded and rooted in who you are, then you have the ability to make these connections, to reach with your roots, reach with your branches, and it's coming from a stable place and a grounded place.
Wow, I love that metaphor. And like this, the strength and the height that that tree reaches as well, like that connection to something higher, like the universe or whatever that we with manifesting that we connect with. That's really beautiful. But having that, yeah, that groundedness and that steadiness in its roots. I love that. I love what you were saying about you said like nowadays, and I totally agree, like the videos that I come across is like the fastest way to manifest, or you're doing this wrong, you could be doing this to get it faster. And what you said, this frantic and desperate energy. And it's kind of interesting because with dating and relationships, especially the dating phase, sometimes when we're wanting to be in a relationship, there is that desperation, there is that frantic energy to not be single, to not be alone forever, like desperate to meet someone. And yeah, just like with what you were talking about, that tree, if you're just reaching into one direction, like the rest of the tree is weakened, it's not stable, it's not balanced. So yeah, it's interesting how that works for dating as well. And I just would like to know, how can we use manifestation, I guess in an effective way, in a balanced way to enhance dating, to enhance our relationships and love?
Yes, yes, thank you. This is a great question. And so first I want to say I have been that desperate person chasing someone. I am not
I
proud,
think we all
but
have.
yeah, I mean, we probably all have. And I honestly felt that I spent years that way, and some of it was more desperate than others. And and I also feel and believe that I manifested my husband. Now, when I say that, there's also this element that part of my logical brain is like, it's not like I conjured him up from thin air. That's not what I'm saying.
Hmm.
I knew the kind of person I wanted to be with, and I put myself in circumstances where I was stable and self-accepting and feeling grounded, and I was open to the opportunities that came to me. And so when I say I manifested my husband, that is truly what I mean. It wasn't an overnight thing. And yet when I really gave up desperation truly, and leaned back from this whole dating game process, I did meet him very quickly after that. And I say very quickly because I had wanted to meet my life partner, almost been obsessed with it since I was probably 14 or 15 or 16. And it was 10 years later that I met my husband. So if there are people who are listening who, I'm sure there are people who are like, oh, well, you still met him when you were young, and I'm in my 30s or I'm in my 40s, and all this time. I want you to know that, well, one, we both feel for you, we're there for you, and a shift of a perspective away from all this time I've been waiting or all this time I've been looking. If you can set yourself up to think, okay, what if that attitude is part of this reaching of a branch that's making you unstable? And
Hmm.
I'm not saying that it wasn't true, that time hasn't passed in your life. And what I want to expand out, so if we're working with a tree's lifetime, let's say, a tree who's 20 years old or 40 years old is still a young tree in its lifespan. And so if that tree can expand with this time frame and think, okay, that this was the life path the tree had so far, and now it's in an even better place to meet that tree down the road. So this tree analogy doesn't work in every single way with dating, obviously.
Hmm.
But I'm helping the audience, helping all of you listeners to think, okay, so if instead of thinking all of this time, what if you have gratitude for all of this time? All of this time, you've had your life that's beautiful. You haven't given up. You still want this. And that I feel the goosebumps, which for me, I'm a clairsentient. So when I feel things in my body, that's a yes and moment of let's keep on going with this. So all this time you've had desire and you haven't given it up, which says that this really means a lot to you. And and if you can let yourself also play with the thought, okay, I've had this great life so far. I still have this desire to be with someone, and that is wonderful. So how can I nurture this great growing tree so that I am sustained, I am trusting myself, I am accepting myself, because I also adopted the thought of it's inevitable that I will meet my partner. I truly just bought in, like there's no way I can't. I believe, even in addition to believing of all of manifesting and or woo-woo stuff, I'm also a scientist. And so I believe in logic and reason and equations and mathematics. And I thought to myself, how would a creator create someone with such a burning desire, which feels like part one of the equation, but never finish the equation? That didn't, to me, that doesn't make sense. And I think, but when I look at the natural world, all of these other things make sense. Therefore, there is this end to my equation. There is this A plus B. So simply the fact that it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not happening. So I adopted and fully accepted and fully embraced it's going to happen. I need to not worry about the timing of it at all.
Wow, that's a great quote as well. And for anybody listening that is, wanting to be in a loving relationship and is maybe feeling a bit doubtful that it's ever going to happen, here's like a fantastic affirmation that you can stick on your mirror, have on your work computer, whatever. It's inevitable that I'll meet my partner. I love that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm.
And you mentioned something else. You said you put yourself in circumstances where you were open, and like the word that sticks out is the where you were open to meet someone. Because I know a lot of the women I talk to, they want the relationship. They want that loving partner. They want the end result, but they are afraid to open themselves up. Like they're still kind of stuck in that. So, yeah, I'd like to know more about how you got to that and maybe share a bit of your journey, like how you got to the point where you were open and like what circumstances were they that you put yourself into? I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if that makes sense, if you can tie
Oh,
that all
yes, it
together.
does. It does. Yes. So, and first I want to go a little bit broad and bring in the nature element as well. So
Mm-hmm.
when I look at the natural world, there are flowers all over, and many different flowers have different pollinators, which tells me, oh, there's a pollinator for every flower. This is also why I think A plus B, like my equation was going to be completed. I was going to meet this partner. There's not going to be a flower that doesn't have a pollinator. And and yet there are sunflowers, there are roses, there are daisies, there are violets. They're all different. Some are pollinated by moths, by bees, by
Mm-hmm.
hummingbirds. What I am helping people to maybe start thinking about is, oh, so there's all kinds of possibilities for this to happen. I love reading women's fiction, romance, because to me, the novels are so fun of how are these two people going to meet? You never know when you start the book. And there's all kinds of meetings that can happen, some of which are, oh, your high school so and so just happens to call you up again. And maybe that's your meet cute moment. Or maybe it's you start going to the new coffee shop that opens up and it just so happens so does some other handsome person. So there are possibilities and opportunities everywhere. And it's also very normal to get so much in your everyday thing that you already do that you start believing, well, it's just the way it is. There's no good men in this town, or I'm never going to meet anybody, or I've tried this and I've tried that and it's not working out. So, and again, I don't want to negate anyone's experiences that you've had, and those thoughts are not going to make you likely to go somewhere this weekend that you
Mm-hmm.
could meet someone. or to say, oh, I'll try out a meetup group, or I'll try a dating app again because I would like to try again. So it's very difficult to be open if you've already decided, well, none of that works anyway, so I'm done. So deciding to have an openness, I think, is really good. And
Mm-hmm.
I so a few different things that I did when I was dating were, and I was already a little bit the type to go try out new things. So that, I don't know, the openness in that way was what I had to work on so much, but I did try to say yes to things that I really enjoyed, even if it meant, like, oh, I got to not be in my PJs, or maybe I'm going to have to, put on some mascara and wear some earrings. I definitely did things that were slightly out of my comfort zone, but I wasn't radically going out of my comfort zone to do these new opportunities. And this one thought that I came across that I decided was that I was just going to be open to meeting the different kinds of people that I would meet and not decide too quickly. Even though first impressions matter, it some of my best friends in life, the minute I met them, it wasn't instant kismet connection.
Mm-hmm.
And with these friends, I mean, some of these people are still my friends. And the first meeting was very, I don't even remember it. That's
Mm-hmm.
how non-exciting it was.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, and unfortunately, like movies and books will also play up like the first moment of being explosion, or you just knew. And I didn't. I
Mm.
mean, I liked my husband when I met him, but it did not feel any different than every other guy that I had a crush on for like 10 years before that.
Mm-hmm.
There was a moment a couple weeks into it where I said to myself, this feels different. I don't know what it is, but something is different about this. And
Mm.
my now husband said to me we even had a conversation. We were both like, this feels different. And we're like, well, let's see what happens next.
Mm.
I do think sometimes with dating, there's so much emphasis put on those first few moments. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, at least, it builds a lot of anxiety and
Mm-hmm.
tension and expectation
Mm-hmm.
that makes me not show up as a great person because it feels like a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think we tend to also forget the importance of, and maybe because we're not connected to ourselves, but I know nowadays, like the importance for me with anything of reflection, enough
Mm.
integration. So all of these like new experiences that you're having with a person or feelings, like to actually reflect on them, to integrate what's happening, to get your I guess your nervous system or your body on board or not. But like that is a slow process, and it requires you to slow down, to rest and go inward. So I feel like that as well, no, I don't want to say should be, but it's helpful if you take that time to actually reflect and integrate the experience you're having.
Oh, I am 100%. And and now I want to share a story, so when I met my husband, I actually in the same week or so met two people I really liked. So I started dating them both, which I have never really done. I almost would have said that I was not that level of skill or like people being attracted to me in droves. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like dating two people at once, there's still a part of me that's like, did that really happen? Because it feels so much outside of my identity.
Yeah.
And I wasn't seriously dating either one. It was still very, getting to know each other. But what you were talking about with the reflection, this is the reason I'm bringing it up. They both, ironically, had some of the same characteristics in both of them that I enjoyed. And they each had other characteristics that were either at my growing edge or at my comfort edge or kind of the trade-offs. And so
Mm.
I really let myself date them each and notice and give myself time to reflect. What do I think about this? How do I picture this going if I play this out of my mind? What about this person? How am I playing that out? So, and look, I know not everybody has the opportunity to compare and contrast two people. And I also think sometimes people really struggle if they like two people at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, who do you choose? And at a certain point, I realized one of them, to me, had a level of he didn't want to be in a committed relationship in the short run. And it was kind of like, maybe I will, maybe I won't. And I just realized I'm at the point in my life where if that's what you're saying, that's already enough of a no for me. Not that the other person I was dating, we weren't really talking about the in-depth of commitment, but the guy who was talking about commitment, to me, it almost seemed like he was already putting the brakes on commitment early on by letting me know, well, I don't know what level of commitment I want to have. And I thought, yeah, okay, I can already tell you in your short-term vision of this, you don't want a committed relationship, and I do. So I'm already going to say, and yet I'm with someone else, even though we're not talking about commitment. He's not telling me that he's not into it. And so that was one of the differentiating points for me. And again, everybody has their own nuanced experiences of what would be a yes or a no for you. But it was one of those things that as I reflected, what I was telling myself at the time was, I'm deserving of somebody committing to me, even at the minor level of, are we going to date other people or not? Because that was kind of the point we were starting to get to. And this guy still wanted to date other people. And I didn't want to be dating multiple people. I wanted to have one person, exclusivity. And it felt very much, I'm affirming what I want and I get to choose what I want. And I'm acknowledging again, for some people, this might be a whoa, you get to just claim what you want and say that you're going to have it. And it did feel a little bit bold to say that. And I deeply believed it because I thought, I've dated people who they don't know if they want to be committed, but I'm going to see. And I just reached the point where I thought, I'm tired of that. If you don't know, that's fine. Go don't know with somebody else. Because that's not what I want anymore.
Yeah.
I'm tired of waiting around for somebody else to figure out, do they want to see where this relationship goes?
Yeah. Wow. I love that. That you're knowing about, what you were worth, what you wanted. And even at that age, you were young, to be so bold, I guess, at that stage. Cause like that, that's still something that I'm, working on to really assert my needs and my wants. So that's amazing. So you're a psychic coach. So I'd like to know about, like, how did your psychic abilities come into like your dating and your love life? And also I'd like to know, like, when did you know and how did you know that you had these abilities?
Yes. Oh, great question. So I had some of these abilities as a child and they felt very overwhelming to me. So I, as best as I could, shut them off, although they didn't shut off in every way. So I still had a strong intuition because that didn't scare me. And my dream life was very intense and sometimes prophetic. And that I almost felt like I had no control over anyway. So that still kept on going. The interesting thing, in some ways regarding dating, I don't know if it helped me. I will say, in some ways, it probably did not help me because I would, in my own mind, kind of see the potential of a relationship more than I was actually living with the reality of what it was now. So that was the downside for me of I definitely dated many people who it felt like emotionally there was this strong attraction, and I felt the potential of what it could be, but what it ever was not what it could be.
Mm.
And so it didn't help me in that way. The ways in which it did help me, which I believe also relate to self-trust to a great degree, was anyone who I felt was dangerous or red flags or a no, I didn't go further with.
And would you say, like, is intuition the same as psychic ability? Like, are the two, can you
Mm.
speak to that? Like, how they're
Yeah,
linked?
great question. I see it in a way as a spectrum. So, but this is funny because now I feel like my spirit guides are like, also is kind of like a flower with radiuses coming out everywhere. But the spectrum part of it, the one dimensional description will be everyone has intuition. I 100% hands down believe this. And depending on how you develop it or work with it or listen to it, can also impact the strength of it. As in, if you never listen to it or you don't believe that you have it and you don't pay attention to it, you're probably not going to notice it. It might be a 1 on a scale of 1 to 10.
Mm.
And let's say if you're highly intuitive, you're further on the scale, but maybe it's still just for you and your life circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas to me, psychic then gets to this other range where I can do for other people. I can reflect to them what's in their energy field. What I see are high probabilities for things happening.
Are you able to do that like virtually as well? Like, are you able to like
Yes.
tune into me right now and get some kind of a hit or something? Or do, like, what does it take to be able to, like, do you have to turn yourself on? Like, how does that work?
Great question. So one of my things, I believe, because I turned it off as a child, was I have really good boundaries about it now because I wanted to live life not being impacted or controlled or influenced when I don't want to be by all the other stimulus of the world. The other element of, oh yeah, this is why I'm thinking, even though I've been describing it many times as a spectrum, the radius part of it is so I can connect with departed loved ones or spirits on the other side.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's in words, pictures, or other information. And that to me in some ways feels unique to a psychic. However, if you have a connection to a loved one who's departed, I believe that similar to intuition, most of us have a way of connecting to that departed loved one, but that also relates to, do you believe that you can do that?
Hmm.
Is that within the realm of possibility for you? Because if
Hmm.
you just think it's not possible at all, the likelihood of that happening is very low because the other side is not, it's not visible like our chairs that we're sitting in, our cars that we drive in, our homes that we
Hmm.
live in. And so there's subtlety there to be able to tune into that.
Hmm.
And yet, if you have a desire, you can tap into it. Um, one of the Before I met my husband, I had a dream 2 or 3 weeks prior that it wasn't about love at all, but it was just the feeling of this calm peace and acceptance. So that affirmation I said before of I'm accepting this is inevitable for me, that's when I truly released and deeply believed and tapped into, oh, this is truly inevitable for me.
Hmm.
And the dream was me in the ocean. It wasn't him or
Hmm.
any of that, but I had that dream and I thought about it every day. And I just felt, okay, I can relax. My destiny is inevitable or love is inevitable. And it let me tap into and believe that possibility. And I think that is what then made it easy for me to meet him
Hmm.
and have the openness to get to know him. Because, and kind of going back into this story a little bit, as we were talking about integrating, and while there are many things I love about my husband, and he meets like all of this criteria, because I made a list. I had a list of over 80 items that I wanted in my partner, and he meets that list. What I didn't think about is there are other things that I didn't want that weren't on the list, that in our early relationship, I was like, oh, you're like this and like that. And I really had to spend the time to get to know, like, what are the things that I'm willing to work with here?
Yeah.
Because even though I think he and I, in some ways, are so perfect for each other, we still are humans who have to work out the things that the other person does that annoys us or that we don't
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, totally. That's so funny that you mentioned that, because same with me. Like I had a big long
Yeah.
list. Um, and yeah, my partner like meets the whole list. Like and it wasn't all at once. Like some of the things take time to realize, right? So I was starting to tick off like,
Same.
yep, 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 and always more, 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 and now he ticks it all. And then I forgot to list some things, and I didn't think about some things. So these things came off, and it's like, oh, didn't write that down. And then it's like, am I willing to, am I willing to accept this like for the rest of my life? And yes, it's always a clear yes. Like, yes, of course, because my main priorities, my main list is fulfilled. And yeah, that's beautiful. And so what did your husband think about that did you share that right away that you have these psychic abilities? And like what did he say when you
No.
did?
Oh, such a good question. So at the time, I would have just called myself a highly intuitive person.
Mm-hmm.
He knew I was into things of this spiritual nature, and it wasn't super prominent in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I did not consider myself psychic at all. Over the course of the next number of years, I still just thought I'm a highly intuitive person and I follow my intuition. Therefore, because the lines of communication with my intuition are always open, several years ago, my second child was born and I was having a lot of challenges with him. And that's when I started reawakening my own psychic abilities. And I remembered that I turned them off as a child, and I thought, okay, these would be handy. So let me bring them back. And
Mm.
yeah, because the funny thing, I forgot to tell you this. When I turned them off as a child, I said a prayer and I was like, look, I can't handle this right now, but I might be able to handle it when I'm older. So I'm not like turning it off forever, giving it up forever, but for right now. And if I ask for it
Mhm.
back, like, please give it back to me later.
Yeah.
And they shut off, pretty much like a light switch then. So I reawakened my psychic abilities. I was nervous to tell my husband because even though he's open to it, he's not, I mean, he's supportive of me, but he's not like rah rah rah. He doesn't have a shirt that says my wife is the psychic or anything.
Yeah.
He,
He's like, you do you, honey.
exactly, exactly. So, and I'm glad of that because it he lets me be me and I try to let him be him. I'm not
Mm.
into all the things he's into. And
Hmm.
some of them I am fully thinking, I don't understand that, nor do I want to or care. And I
Yeah.
think that's how he feels too.
Hmm. In terms of the women listening, but on a dating journey or maybe struggling in relationships, what's if you were to give like one piece of advice when it comes to manifesting
Mm,
and or harnessing psychic abilities, I'm not sure if those are tied
yeah.
in there together. Like, is there some practical step or exercise or idea that you can give our listeners?
Yes, that's a great question. So I actually have two practical steps for people. I'm just going to say returning to yourself in a way that feels that you're in the now, you're present, and you're feeling good. Now, for me, grounding can happen with a guided meditation or sitting outside or being outside looking at the trees. Some people tell me they love my book, Talk to the Trees, because it helps them to ground. So
Mm.
back to the tree I talked about at the very beginning. When that tree feels really rooted, strong with its trunk, then it can act from there. But to me, it all starts with that. And it allows you to be calm. And if you're already the type of person who you're thinking, I've just been sitting at home and not getting out and doing stuff, just praise yourself. Hey, I've been grounding in and not making myself go chase after anything. Look at how wise I was to follow my own needs. Along with that, the ways in which you can acknowledge what your needs are and accept that those are your needs and be okay with that, and not even just okay, but loving that. It took a lot for me, as I was saying before, when I was dating those two guys, to tell the one, I don't want to date you anymore because I do want to be exclusive, or
Mm.
I don't just want to on and on and on be non-exclusive for 6 months and see what happens while you're dating three other people. And I could
Mhm.
date more people. I just knew without a doubt that is not for me. And I'm going to affirm it and not just be easygoing because I want love and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get there.
Mm.
I think the doing whatever it takes is, what if you can do whatever it takes to accept yourself, to accept your needs, to accept that you trust and love yourself. I saw this couple this morning. I went to a coffee shop before I came to meet with you, and I was thinking about our conversation. And this couple, how do I want to say, I say whatever I say with a non-judgmental heart, but I just want to frame it up. No one would ever look at them and be like, those are models in Hollywood movies, or that person, if I could date them, dang it, like I'll run 3 miles and climb a mountain. So I just want to, in a non-judgmental, say, no one is going to be like, whoa, that's a highly desirable person, attractive wise or money wise or whatever. And I
Mhm.
saw this cute couple holding hands, and I could just see by the way they were holding hands how much they adored each other. And
Ooh.
yeah, and none of them is quote unquote very special in terms of how we might measure
Mhm.
looks or status or charisma. And I just thought, look at the two of them loving each other. And last week I was at the farmer's market, and this woman, we were sharing a table because you could buy food and then there's tables where you can eat it right there. So she came to share my table, and she had on this shirt that I think was about a horror movie with skulls and chainsaws, or very much not my style at all. And I was asking her about her shirt, and she looked like, let's just say, a biker chick, and who's into horror films. And then this guy comes up to stand with her, and he's also wearing some horror biker shirt. And they're both like attractive, charismatic people, not who I would necessarily picture as quote unquote biker chick. And I remember looking at them and thinking, look, I wouldn't want to date a biker guy. You couldn't pay me millions. It would not
Mhm.
appeal to me. If he wanted to watch horror movies all the time, we would be a terrible match. And I looked at them thinking, and they told me, we go to the farmer's market every Saturday. Now, you don't always associate farmer's market with biker also liking horror, but look at this interesting combo and these two
Mm.
people who are so perfectly matched,
Mm.
who have all of these unique preferences. They're not my preferences, but they don't have to be my preferences. They found somebody who has their preferences, who really enjoys and who really loves them.
Mm.
And that was the other thing for me, when I was okay to say no to that one person, because I thought my preferences, my needs are important enough that I can say yes, and I can still believe that there is someone who will like me with my preferences, with my interests, with my ways that I am, with the
Mm.
fact that I'm not the richest or the most attractive or the thinnest or the whatever. I truly, I remember, because I've got a big booty, and that comes and goes in fashion. But at the time when I was dating, I felt like it wasn't. But I remember one of my friends was like, oh, there's guys who love that. And I was like, really? Because I'm not meeting them. but I did meet someone who likes that. And so letting yourself accept and love the way that you are physically,
Mm-hmm.
interest wise, values wise, lets you return to this belief that you can find someone who does truly love you as you
Mm-hmm.
are, and you don't have to be performing and stretching yourself into something that you're not. What if the
Mm-hmm.
stretching is a stretching of love and acceptance for yourself?
Mm, yeah. I love that. That's beautiful. And some great examples. Like, yeah. Yeah, I love that. And again, tying it back to what you said about, every flower has a different pollinator and there's so many,
Mhm.
like they find each other when they're meant to be. And that's so beautiful. That's great.
Yeah.
Where can women find out more about you? And I guess also if you want to speak to your book, Talk to the Trees.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like where can women find out more about you and where can we find your book and what's it about?
Yes. Oh, yes. So I am on a lot of the social media platforms. I have a website, rachelstrivelli.com, and I'm
Hmm.
Rachel Strivelli on the various platforms. I'm on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram almost every day.
Hmm.
I have my book for sale on Amazon because that's very easy for most people to buy up there. And Talk to the Trees. It's channeled words from the trees thoughts, their wisdom, their support to help you feel more grounded, more self love, more calm. And a lot of people tell me it gives them the feeling of being out in the forest and having that calm, even if they're reading it between Zoom calls or they're reading it as they're taking a bath. Or I know people who take it hiking with them or on a picnic to
Hmm.
go find a tree and enjoy being around the tree. And another thing about it that makes it unique is I love when there is something perhaps related to thought or spirituality or reflection, but also something practical. Like earlier you mentioned, what's a practical tip?
Hmm.
The book has both the thoughts of the trees and this reflective spiritual contemplation, and every chapter ends with a here's how to apply this in your life. Here's an activity you can
Hmm.
do to try this out. And people tell me that is really fun for them and some of them are journal prompts or go outside and do this activity. So it really is a fun way to engage that you can make it how you want to make it. And it's not just a book to contemplate in your own mind. It allows you to integrate it and ground it into your own body.
Hmm. I love that. That's great. Yeah, super interesting.
Thank
Um,
you.
and yeah, and I was just thinking about myself, like reading your book while I'm standing with my tree. And
Ooh,
it's
I love
yeah,
it.
it's that's one thing I find so beneficial for grounding is like I'm a tree girl for sure. I love the ocean, I love the mountains, I love the rivers, the whatever, but trees, there's something so wise and grounding, centering,
Hmm.
stable. So that energy, and I love that you channeled trees for your book. That's great.
Thank you. Yes, I
Hmm.
love their wisdom too and their stability. And if, as you're going, listeners, dating and feeling the ups and the downs that sometimes happen, trees, I like to say they're my life coach. They're always there for me.
Hmm.
They're always there for you. They can make you feel better, make you feel grounded and calm as you're stretching and growing and exploring new things.
Yeah, yeah. So, take away from this episode, go hug a tree, and then, yeah, and then start to, up your manifestation game. That's
Mhm.
awesome. So, Rachel, is there anything that I haven't that you're dying to express or that I haven't asked you about yet? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Let me think about that for a second. Well, one thing I do want to say about manifesting
Hmm.
that is similar to how I feel about intuition. I think that is also a skill. It's
Hmm.
something that you develop. So if you've tried it a few times and you think, it didn't work, I tried learning piano a few times and then I had to learn even more and take lessons. So lots of things in life are this way. And I teach manifesting classes and work with people. They're interactive, they're engaging, because it's sometimes hard to do things in isolation and see what you don't know, because it's all so unknown. And so be kind and gentle with yourself if you've tried manifesting, or you've tried to develop your intuition, or if you've tried dating and you're like, oh, well, maybe I'm just no good at it. I mean, I was terrible at flirting and still feel like I'm terrible at it in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
But that's okay. Like, so we can all be working on getting better at some things, even while there's other things that maybe come more naturally to us. So it's
Mm-hmm.
okay to be stretching and growing and letting yourself have that ability that develops over time.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I have manifesting classes that I run that are virtual, and I also work with people one-on-one if that's something that is intriguing to people.
Awesome. I will be sure to leave a link to find out more about your classes, find out more about you. I'll leave that in the show notes, as well as your book link and your social links. That's awesome. Rachel, final question before we wrap up for today. What song are you dancing to nowadays?
Oh, I love it. So, well, I always love Bob Marley. So if that comes
Mm.
on, I am definitely dancing. And in the garden, oh, there's a remix of an old Bob Marley song that I've been dancing to. I might list a few because I love dancing. I also am, and right now my kids take over my Spotify playlist a lot.
Nice.
So they've always, but the ones that we all like in common, we all like AJR, we all like Imagine Dragons. The song about I found me a cheerleader. I think cheerleader is the name of the song.
Okay.
That one I love dancing to. And I've also been playing with my kids about writing songs too. We've only gotten a few
Mm.
verses here and there, but that's a fun thing that we
Oh,
do.
that's really fun. Yeah. I love that you love
Mm-hmm.
dancing. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for chatting with me today. It was super interesting. Yeah, thank you for sharing your journey and your experience.
Thank you.